Now, where have all the moderate Republicans gone? Well, it looks like Rush Limbaugh told them to get. He rough-talked them and ran them off. During the Republican primaries, they were largely trounced by Tea Party candidates who mocked them for not being pure ideologues. But did that work? Well, yes and no. The Republicans cleaned house, literally. Huge wins based on the idea of no compromise. But the most extreme Tea Party candidates almost all lost. Christine O'Donnell, Ken Buck, John Racy, Joe Miller's in trouble in Alaska, and of course Carl Palladino got killed in New York. Now, the man who lost to Palladino in the GOP primary, former Republican Congressman Rick Lazio, joins us right here. Rick, great to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be on.
And good to have you. So, look, you
had to use the word trounced, right?
Well, look, let's put it this way. Now, Palladino won in the primary with 64% of the vote, right? But he lost in the general election by 27 points.
Yeah.
So the obvious question is, did the voters in the primary make a mistake?
Well, you can't win as a Republican in some of these, what they call blue states, large urban areas, diverse population, unless you're relatively moderate and you can speak to sort of social progress and a strong economy both at the same time. It's a blown opportunity, obviously, for Republicans in New York, while the rest of the country saw so many Republican gains. In New York, we had corruption trial after corruption trial, investigation, scandal, $10 billion deficits for as far as the eye can see, the most dysfunctional state legislature in America, according to NYU. This ought to have been a time where you could really make the case for change, but you have to have the right messenger and you have to have an issue-based campaign to have credibility. I think New York Republicans failed that test, unfortunately, this time.
So what happens next among the Republicans? Because, you're considered within that context a moderate Republican, right? But the primary was devastating, and it was a big sign, but yet they lost in the general. So I feel like they're stuck. Can you run again? Do you think you'd have a shot at a primary?
No, I think it's very tough. Honestly, I think the system is trapping more moderate candidates, the pragmatists, the people that have the ability to consensus build and bring about solutions. They sort of cleanse on the right and the left. Some of it is because of reapportionment when it comes to legislative districts. Some of it is just because of who controls the respective parties. And we think we want that at the time of the primary, but when it comes to actually governing, we kind of get pretty disappointed with results because you're not getting the input from logical, sensible, reasonable people on both sides. Look, Mike Castle losing in Delaware was a perfect example. An excellent legislator, somebody who could bridge the divide philosophically and get things done. There's a guy who couldn't survive a primary, even though he's a former governor, a former multi-term congressman.
So have the moderates been weeded out of the Republican Party? Are there almost any left?
I think it's true on both sides, to be fair. On the Democratic side, where you have districts that are very urban, in many cases you don't even have a Republican challenger. Those are folks that don't feel a whole lot of political accountability. And so they can go out and do whatever they need to do. And generally that's the sort of side with the far left. And on the Republican side, the risk is always that you veer over on particularly rural districts, that you end up electing relatively conservative people. And the people in the middle have really had a hard time in both parties.
Well, Congressman, I have to respectfully disagree, because I think there's a lot of Democrats who I would consider corporatist Democrats, honestly. The Evan Bayes, the Ben Nelsons. Evan Bayes, of course, not going to be there anymore, but Ben Nelson is, et cetera, that always are in favor of tax cuts and cutting spending, et cetera. I think the Democratic Party is littered with them. Whereas on the Republican side, you got no. I honestly, in Congress, can't point to a single moderate Republican.
Yeah, but if you look at, on the Democrat, again, to be fair, someone like Charlie Rangel, who I had a great friendship with when I was in Congress, but the idea that with all of the problems that he has, he gets elected with 80% of the vote, it does say there's something wrong in the system, that we don't really have a healthy
Well,
democracy.
There's two issues there. No, I hear you, and that's gerrymandering, and that's a significant issue and an issue we've always had to deal with, right? But now there's a second issue, which is the polarization, which Rush Limbaugh on the right is leading. And he's saying, hey, we got to run these guys off, and he's against any moderate Republicans. And he's won, though, right? I mean, he's won the day.
Well, there are some people that follow that. There are other people that don't follow that. Hard to say, although she lost in the general election, that Meg Whitman, for example, in California was a right-wing candidate. She really was pro-choice candidate, relatively progressive on immigration.
Speaking of California, Schwarzenegger, you can argue, was moderate. Now, he did very conservative things, but he also, green energy, et cetera, et cetera. And they can't stand him. I mean, the Rush Limbaughs of the world, et cetera, they think he's the worst kind of traitor. And it seems like like that's the momentum on the Republican side, doesn't it?
For Republicans to be a national party, they've got to have answers on the environment, on climate change, on infrastructure, on job creation. Democrats, the same, need to have ideas on how you build a stronger private economy. Both sides need to talk about ways in which they can reduce spending, even in some sacred cow areas like the Department of Defense, to do things efficiently, take out bureaucracy, do things in a way that is more in keeping with the current risks that America faces.
Is this going to blow up on the Republican Party eventually? If they run these extreme guys and they win and they're in charge now, when they go to legislate and they say, no, like Department of Education, no, we don't want it. You know, Environmental Protection Agency, we don't want it. If they actually do that, are they really risking angering the American people significantly?
If people get ahead of the American people, if they misread this election as a huge mandate, then, yeah, they suffer the same risk. Listen, I know people have said this before. 40 years Democrats were in control of the House. Republicans came in for 12 years. They got thrown out. Democrats were in for 4 years. This is a very volatile political situation. It's not just America, by the way. It's worldwide. When you have high unemployment and people think the government is not addressing the core problems that people are facing in the real world, they throw people out awfully quickly. And Republicans ought to look at this as simply a second chance. This is a center-right nation. You veer too far to the right or too far to the left, you see what happens.
Once again, I disagree on the center-right, but the overall sentiment I agree with.
Great.
Thank you for joining us, Congressman.
Good to be on.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.